Welcome, everybody, tonight for a series of meetings. At this time, I'm going to call Community Development to order. We have two items on the agenda. The first one is the matter of the approval of the October 15th, 2024 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Mitchell and seconded by Mr. Oswald.
Question?
Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Second item is the matter of the adoption of the CDBG policy and procedure manual updates. Mona.
Thank you. Through you. We are proposing to change our grant start date from March 1st, which is what it currently is, to October 1st. And the reason we are doing that is essentially to extend our program year. HUD, we have to, every year, submit to HUD our annual action plan. And the annual action plan is due 45 days before the start of your program year. So that would put us, right now, we would submit it on around January 15th. And then after that, HUD has 45 days to review the plan. However, HUD, as the years have gone by, has waited to delay the funding allocation announcements. So they have come out and they said, you have to wait now until HUD gives you your funding allocation in order to submit your annual action plan. And this has been happening. HUD has been releasing them in June and July. So we are missing out on currently January, February, March, April, May, June, July, and then they have an additional 45 days to review our plan. So essentially we have about 4 or 5 months for our CDBG programming. So all of our nonprofits, we enter into agreements with them around August, September, by the time we're able to do that. And then their grant agreements end at the end of that year, so at December 31st. That's all the time that they have. And essentially our public facility projects are supposed to be following that same time frame. However, if we change the program start date to October 1st, HUD will have already released the funding allocations. We will have already submitted our plan, and they will have already had 45 days to review our plan. So essentially, programming should be able to begin on October 1st, and then it would run until July 31st of the following year. So we would be getting 10 months of programming instead of 4 or 5 months of programming. So that's what we are proposing to do. If that is the way council decides to go, we will then, after the ordinance passes, if it does, we will be submitting a letter to HUD formally requesting to change our grant agreement. Or our program start date. We are also in the process of, which you'll be hearing about in a little bit, updating our 5-year consolidated plan. So this will also be part of the consolidated plan, so we wouldn't have to do a substantial amendment to change that as well. But yeah, that's what we have for you today. We have notified our nonprofit partners and our department, the engineering and Parks and Rec, and said, hey, we're putting this on the table, so we just want you to know that the program dates may change if this all goes through, and everybody seemed to be pretty excited about having this extended program year, not having to rush to get everything done within those 4 or 5 months. So we don't anticipate this being a burden on anyone. And also, this will change some of our CDBG application timelines and that sort of thing. So right now, usually we do our application in the fall time, and we'll be starting this kind of in March, April, May. So.
Okay, well, thank you. Are there any questions? Mr. Schneider?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Director Almabayed. So this, we would have to approve this, and then HUD kind of, from what you had said, HUD has the final say in us approving. Are they usually giving of that, it's not really, I mean, they have the approval, but they don't really give pushback, essentially, is what I'm saying, on changing the date.
Like, we haven't really, yeah, we would run this by, council committee, and then it would go to full council, that sort of thing. And then we do have to request that they change it, but we don't usually get a lot of pushback from HUD when we're changing policies in our program manual.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay. Mr. Lippian? No? Okay. You were waving, oh, okay. I didn't see him. Okay. Further questions, comments? If not, Law Director Deary?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Mrs. Almobayed, your referral had requested that this would have an emergency clause due to requirements of HUD. That's correct?
Yes, because this has to be in, I believe it's 2 months before March 1st, which would be our program year. So we're hoping to get all of that in and approved before that deadline. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, I'll read the committee report. We've considered the matter of updates to the Community Development Block Grant CDBG policy and procedures, manual, and authorizing the submission to the HUD agency. This is an ordinance authorizing said CDBG updates. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Motion made by Mr. Oswald, seconded by Mr. Schneider.
Question.
Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, at this time, I'd ask Mr. Tolet to please call Finance.
At this time, I'll call finance to order.
Thank you, Mr. Tolet. Two items on the agenda for the joint meeting tonight. The first one is the matter of the approval of the October 15th, 2024 joint meeting minutes. Can I get a motion?
Second?
Motion made by Mrs. Mitchell, seconded by Mr. Schneider. Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Second item is the matter of a third public hearing for the matter of the program year 2025 CDBG Action Plan 2025 through 2029 Consolidated Plan. Analysis of impediments to fair housing choice and slum and blight recertifications. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held on October 28th, 2024 in Elyria City Council Chambers, Elyria, Ohio, City Hall at 131 Court Street, Elyria at 6 p.m. concerning the city's planning year 2025 Community Development Block Grant Action Plan and 2025 to 2029 Consolidated Plan. Analysis of impediments to fair housing choice and slum and blight recertification. The intent of the plan is to create a housing and community development strategy in which the city of Elyria identifies resources and programs to address various needs for the 2025 program year. Are there any proponents?
Through you, so the purpose of the public hearing tonight is to touch on the requirements of the city of Elyria for the 5-year consolidated plan, which includes the 2025 CDBG action plan, which we have already discussed and developed the draft budget for in a previous public hearing and meeting, as well as the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. As a reminder, these two documents, the 5-year plan and the analysis of impediments, are both requirements for us to receive CDBG funding. So we are going to review just the general data results for the 5-year plan, as well as the results and the proposed impediments to the fair housing concerns, and also to obtain the views of citizens if they may choose to comment on this as well. As a reminder, the plans are available for viewing until November 18th in the City Community Development Office as well as online. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this over now to Elizabeth McNanny. She is with Resource Consultants. She has been assisting us throughout this process to do a brief presentation.
Thank you, Ashley. I am Elizabeth McNanny, and I am very excited to have been working with the City of Elyria over the last number of months. And with Ashley and Mona, they are fantastic. So that's just my 2 cents worth. And I'll jump into this. It's a short presentation, and then I will stand for any questions if you have any. This is just an overview of the CDBG program. It's just a couple slides that talk about how it came into being in 1974, and it brought together a bunch of different grant programs that were competitive. Things like public facilities and model cities, federal urban renewal, that sort of thing, and made them into basically a grant that comes to cities of 50,000 people or more every year as an entitlement. And there's a formula that HUD uses. It's actually, you can look it up online. I think there's a YouTube video, and it's riveting. It's not. So the primary objectives of the CDBG program are to create decent housing, a suitable living environment, and expand economic opportunities for low and moderate income residents in the community. Each funded activity must meet a national objective, and the first 2 are typically the ones that a community would use. They have to benefit either low and moderate income residents or aid in the prevention and/or elimination of slums or blight areas. There is also an urgent need national objective. You would never use that unless HUD tells you you can. So that's typically used for natural disasters, things like that. Again, the core principles are to benefit low and moderate income residents within the City of Elyria, and community participation, really hoping to gain feedback and interest from the community, leveraging in partners. So the city has some great partners that work with the program already and bring money to leverage their programs with the city. And strategic and targeted investment. There's not enough money to solve really even one big problem with $750,000 a year. But being strategic and targeting that money can help it to go further. So there are a couple of key data points that I find interesting because I'm a data nerd, but we'll just kind of go through those pretty quickly. The population in the base year, which this is what auto-populates in the consolidated plan, is the base year and then 2020 American Community Survey census data, have the population at 54,050 people in the base year, just under 54,000 in 2020, and then other data shows that there are estimates, this is an ACS estimate from 2022, that the population was between about 52,780, maybe a little bit higher. The 2023 estimate actually went up a bit, and that's from the annualized estimates of residential population in incorporated places in Ohio. Income increased between 2009 and 2020 by 7%. Households in Elyria, this I find very interesting, and there's a reason behind this. While in 2009 there were 22,550 households in Elyria, even though the population shrank a little bit, about 2.5%, in 2020, there were 23,136 households in Elyria. So more households than there had been in 2009. The reason for that is because households are becoming smaller. So family sizes are shrinking and continuing to shrink, and so household sizes are continuing to shrink. So you may have fewer people and the need for more housing units at the same time. This follows the national trend. This is happening all over the country where household sizes are decreasing. So I find this very interesting too. In the 2020 to 2022 estimates, there were a little over 2,700 studio and one-bedroom rental units in the city of Elyria, which is just over 28% of all rental units. There were 16,387 one- and two-person households. Over 70% of all the households in Elyria. And in the most recent estimates that we have that are really good, solid estimates, almost 8,500 are single-person households. So the housing stock size is maybe just slightly out of whack at this point. And this is nationwide too. This is not an Elyria issue. This is definitely nationwide. Of those 8,500 single-person households, over 5,000 of those are female. So, it's interesting information because this is what can guide your investment over the next 5 years. And I know that both Ashley and Mona are committed to taking the information that comes in and helping to make changes to what's happening in the community. In Elyria, 41.6% of residents are renters. That's up a little bit over 2009 by a slight increase over 2012, actually. It's about 3% higher than it was in 2012. It's also higher than the Ohio average and the average for the entire United States. 45% of those renters are cost burdened, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income just on critical housing needs. Where is that the biggest issue? That's the biggest issue for the lowest wage earners. For folks who earn $20,000 or less, and then again for folks who earn between $20,000 and $35,000, it's definitely an issue. In Elyria, then, 58.4% of the residents are homeowners, and not quite 21% of homeowners are cost burdened. Now, they're thinking about making some changes in how they think about cost burden, because if you make $20,000 to $30,000 a year and have to spend 40% of your income on rent or housing, you're truly cost burdened. You don't have enough for the other things that you need. If you make $400,000 a year or $4 million a year and have to spend 40% of your income, or want to spend 40% of your income on that, you still have money for the balance of what you need in your life, typically. So this is just a graph that shows the cost burden across income levels in Elyria and shows the difference between 2017 and 2022. So for your lowest wage earners, the cost burden has gone up a little bit. More of them are cost burdened now. And then here's some information about seniors as opposed to the general population for both home ownership and renters. So you can see that seniors have a much greater incidence of being cost burdened even as homeowners. And they also have a greater incidence of being cost burdened as renters. And these are the differences between 2017 and 2022 also. Then I'm going to talk just for a few minutes about the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. And I'm not going to read all of this, but it's something that came into statute in 1983, but wasn't reflected in regulation until 1988. And it requires every year the city certifies that they are affirmatively furthering fair housing. And this is an obligation not just with HUD housing money, but housing money that comes into the community from any federal source. And an impediment is, these look very similar, but they say slightly different things. Any action, omission, or decision taken because of race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, or national origin, which restricts housing choice or the availability of housing choice. The second one says that has the effect of restricting housing choice. So it's not as blatant. If something happens that restricts housing choice, then it could be an impediment. This has happened in communities that have maybe gotten in a little trouble with HUD occasionally. I get called in sometimes when folks are maybe a little bit sideways, but it can happen when a city makes concessions to market rate developers that they don't make to affordable housing developers. So that would be something that would have the effect of restricting housing choice. And I'm definitely not going to read all of this to you tonight, but things that are counterproductive to fair housing choice can include things like NIMBYism. We don't want that housing built here. And that actually is an impediment in a lot of communities across the country. Impediments have to be actionable. So we wouldn't have an impediment for a community where there's a state statute that restricts action on that impediment. So it has to be something that the community can act on. So the three that we have are limited English proficiency, and really that's about equal access to programming for everyone in the community. And a language access plan is actually required by HUD, has to meet their 4-factor analysis and requirements and all of that. They haven't been great at helping communities put those together. But now they're out monitoring against, does a community have one? So this is an easy one to fix. It actually is about having something that meets HUD's requirements in place, and then making sure that subrecipients and other folks in the program know about the requirements. And impediment 2 is about really consistently tracking fair housing activities. The city's already doing a pretty good job of tracking everything that they are doing related to fair housing and making sure that's all in one place. Basically, everything you're doing with subrecipients and then everything that's happening at outreach events or every time you're passing out information, keeping that all together in one place. The Fair Housing Office with HUD is also out there with a couple of clients of mine in the last year, and they asked to see the binder. Show us the binder. Don't just tell us where you were, but show us what you passed out there. So it's just really about keeping great track The city is already doing a really good job of outreach. It's just about making sure that that's available to HUD. And the third is a concern with rental market and fair housing violations. So we do some work with the fair housing. HUD puts fair housing money into what they call FIPS and FAPS, and they track fair housing complaints and violations. So there is a concern that not all landlords have enough information to understand when they might be creating a fair housing violation. So it's important to do landlord training to make sure you're getting that information out, but also making sure that individuals know what's happening in the community and what their rights are. The city is doing a lot of that. It's just, there's still this perception that this is happening, that there is some discrimination in the rental market. That's basically what I have for you tonight. It's a really quick overview, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. This time, look for questions. Mr. Tolet?
Through you. An area of housing in both Elyria and across the country that almost seems unregulated right now is mobile home parks. We are seeing homeowners who rent spaces, who have clear title to their properties, forced out because of so many private equity companies buying these mobile home parks. I have two questions. How are they included in your study as renters or homeowners?
They're actually included as renters because they rent the space that the home they own is on.
Okay. Does HUD participate in mobile, how do I want to say this, regulation, I guess?
They do. In fact, in Caldwell, Idaho, there was just a case brought in the last couple of weeks against a manufactured home or mobile home park that had clear fair housing violations. So this is a federal case that was brought maybe 2 to 3 weeks ago. So yes, they are involved. It takes a while to investigate these issues, and I would say there is definitely a way to get HUD involved if there are fair housing violations going on. We're also seeing in a lot of areas of the country that manufactured home or mobile home park residents are forming co-ops with the assistance of nonprofits, large funders, and they're buying their own parks and then managing those. That's been really successful in some places.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Mrs. Sawarka?
Thank you. Would you mind going back to the slide right before this? My question is relative. So, through the chair, rental to the administration, rental registration is still voluntary in Elyria, or is it mandatory?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it was an ordinance that was passed a number of years ago, but it is mandatory, and it's renewed every 2 years. Lackluster enforcement.
Thank you, Mayor. Because my question was relative to if we could have somehow more robust rental registration, that would certainly help with the recommendation of the outreach and education, because we would have the information on file of who the property owners were. If there was a way for us, or if that can get incorporated into the recommendation, perhaps that would help with rental registration. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schneider?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. McManamy, on some of the senior homeownership cost restraints, do you know if there's been any push to expand like the homestead tax reduction to try to offset? Because I know it's very limited right now as to how much you can qualify for to get the reduction in taxes, and it usually equates to about $500 a year. But I think that, that's something that should be looked at. I don't know if it's being looked at. I'm just asking you if you know anything about.
I don't know if it's being looked at more, locally or in Ohio. I do know there's some discussion at the national level about ways to help seniors bring costs down, because they are realistically folks on fixed incomes. Seniors and our disabled members of our community are the only members and residents in our cities and counties who really aren't going to have the opportunity to be upwardly mobile, I guess, or get more income. And the raises in their income, the increases are capped. So it's a challenge really across the board.
Thank you.
Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So to expand on that rental registration, of course, in the beginning, I was not in favor of doing it, and it comes back to the old thing where the good ones are going to sign up, and the bad ones are not going to sign up. And when I've had issues with some of the homes, and, well, that's a rental, well, what's the address? Oh, they're not signed up. So you've got, I believe, and I don't know those numbers exactly, but you don't have many people signing up like they're supposed to be. So talk about robust changing. Yeah, you got to do a lot of work, but you got to hold the people accountable that aren't signing up. I sign up my rentals. I feel everybody else should be also. It was supposed to be in case there's an emergency, there's a backup call. So when there's an emergency and then they can't figure out whose house or whatever, but it seems like at that time too, they're holding the landlords, the people that owns the house, at a higher standard than somebody just owns a house where they aren't under the same guidelines. The renters, the landlords are made to have these houses in such great shape, which they should be. But the regular homeowners don't have that same standard. So if you're going to look into that, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that rental registration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Oswald. Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, and thank you, council.
Appreciate it very much. Okay, are there any proponents? Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? And are there any opponents? Seeing none, I declare that this third public hearing has been held. At this time, before we adjourn community development, there are two items that are in pending referrals at the bottom of your agendas. Item number 7 and item number 8 will be removed from the, just on community development, correct? Correct, thank you. And at this time, seeing no further business for community development, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Lippian, seconded by Mr. Schneider.
Question?
Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Meeting adjourned.
Okay, first item on the agenda tonight is the matter of the approval of the October 15th, 2024 finance meeting minutes as circulated. Could I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and properly seconded.
Question?
Question's been called. All in favor, use the voting sign aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, number 2, the matter of a one-time fleet optimization consultation service with Rubicon Global LLC. Safety Service Director.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. What we're asking for is Rubicon is a vendor that we've started a relationship with, and what this would do is this would analyze our sanitation routes to ensure that we are operating efficiently and that our routes are well planned out in order to make sure that we're not wasting mileage, make sure our trucks are going in the right directions and doing so efficiently. It's my understanding we haven't reviewed our routes in over a decade, and that our routes have the potential to be seriously out of proportion. We've had growth on certain parts of the city that are causing some of our days to be heavier than others, significantly heavier, and some of the routes within those days are significantly heavier. And so Rubicon, what they would do is they would analyze our routes and all of our information related to our sanitation program in that vein, and provide to us the most efficient routes to exercise and pick up the trash. So that's what this is about. We did enter into a contract with Rubicon for an app that we intend to start using in our trucks. We are in the process right now of doing the data input into their systems. And what that'll do is it'll help us do a lot of things. Number one, it'll use GPS to help us track our routes, to make sure we have, on occasion, have cans that gets missed, a road that gets missed, especially with some of the newer drivers. So that'll help us address that. It would help us to redistribute routes in the event of a breakdown or a shortage of drivers. If we had a call-offs or something to that effect, we could shift the routes or portions of a route to other drivers to help get the routes covered for that day. There's also there's different use. Every truck would have a smartphone in it that would be hooked up to the app. And using that, the drivers can identify tall grass. They can identify, perhaps, for instance, abandoned cars they might see, and they could identify potholes and report them using the app. Now, I want to be careful because our drivers, they've got a lot going on that I want to pay attention to with the big trucks and the arms and everything else, but these are features of that particular program that we've started to implement with Rubicon. The fleet management is another portion. It's a separate program, but it's another piece of the puzzle to make sure that our trucks are running efficiently, our routes are laid out efficiently. Ultimately, it could potentially lead to maybe a reduction in a route, a reduction of a driver and a truck on the road, ideally. But at this point, we're just trying to make sure that we are doing things efficiently. And I think we might realize some cost savings should we be able to make some adjustments.
Question number 1.
Yes.
First thing, thank you very much.
Yes.
Question number 1, are these hardwired into the trucks, the GPS systems, or is it all done through a smartphone?
It's all done through a smartphone.
Okay. Are you also tracking maintenance in this management system? Oil changes, grease jobs, those type things?
Yes.
Based on mileage?
Yes, they will be able to, but also in addition to that, well, I don't know if it's exactly fed, your point to oil changes, I'm not sure if that's fed in, but what we can do, and I think can incorporate that, is that the pre-run check that a driver does of their vehicle will be done within the app. And so it'll capture all that instead of having a piece of paper or whatever. So all of that will also be included in the app, which is something we've already started with them, going down that path with them. We've been very happy with the service we've received, the engagement we've had with them in that capacity. So the reason we're bringing this to you is that is a 3-year agreement. So that with this would exceed the $75,000. So that's why we're bringing it to you for approval for the fleet optimization. We've already signed a contract for the app, but that will be part of the app, the maintenance records and all that other stuff, yes.
Just, Rubicon's a great company for
Oh.
this, outstanding company, and normally, one of the first things we'll notice is about 20% reduction in fuel usage.
Good. Yeah, in our conversations with them, I think the first call we had with them, afterwards I told the sanitation staff, I said, it's obvious they've got sanitation people within their crew. I mean, they're not just tech people or something. They're people that really understood how these things worked and how to find your efficiency. So I was impressed, as well as our sanitation leadership. I've had a number of calls with them, and I think that we've been impressed with their delivery thus far, their communication and everything. So they seem like they're going to be a good partner. This would be our first time, but they talked to us about some of the other places they have services, and they're legitimate in big cities across the United States. They also offer a snow plow service to track where your plows have gone. We're not looking at that currently, but I only bring it up because I think shortly after Mayor Bibb took office in Cleveland, I think there was an article I remember talking about how they're going to track their snow plows, and that they're using Rubicon for that. And they have a couple of other sanitation accounts, I think Cleveland and a couple other in areas, but they're expanding into this area more so. But they are very, very well established across the United States and have a number of different big city
They're a
contracts.
big company.
Yeah.
Mrs. Sawerka first.
Thank you, through the chair. So I have a couple questions. I think it's a great idea. It hasn't been done for a long time. The snow plow routes were updated, but they're probably antiquated already. Are they going to do anything with brush? Are they going to follow the brush routes? Because in my opinion, that's one of the most inefficient things that we do.
We have not discussed brush with them. It's not part of the current package, not that we couldn't talk about that as a secondary thing, and I don't disagree with you about the efficiency of brush pickup.
Okay, thank you. And additionally, how will we incorporate the many new neighborhoods that are just coming online or will be coming online? Are we going to somehow incorporate those? Because, it's not a static process. There's this many homes right now.
Sure.
But, in a year, we're going to have X amount of homes that will have people in them, and they'll need their garbage picked up.
Absolutely, and I've not explored what an update would look like, for instance, in a year or whatever. This is a one year, let's get started. I will tell you that as it relates to the app and getting them their customer information, it was still on paper. So I mean, some of this is updating what we're doing, our processes, and getting data, data banks, spreadsheets, that kind of stuff created, so that we can then utilize them, add to them, supplement them, adjust them. But yes, I mean, that is something we probably should keep in mind for the future. But this is the first step in that process.
And one additional question. Will this system, or will we be able to track the carts? Because I don't think that that's ever been,
The what?
the carts,
oh,
because.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the cart numbers and that belong to a particular resident. That might be something maybe they won't do now, but I think in the future, or as we roll out when new neighborhoods come into play, there was never a good system of, this cart number belongs to this
This home.
house. And there was never a good system for people that had multiple carts. So I would those are on the periphery. I'm just mentioning they should be on the periphery. Thank you.
Mrs. Davis, and I'm going to work my way down.
Thank you to the chair. My question is, one, so is this system going to be able to track or show you that they miss a whole street?
Yes.
We have a lot of calls about this, so this will help us.
Yes, if we get a call, for instance, and it says, hey, my trash wasn't picked up, we can pull up and see that road, for instance, and see if they missed a can or they missed a street. Yes, that we will have that information. And it'll actually show for the drivers, which is helpful, because we've had some new drivers, we've had some turnover in the department. It'll actually show where they need to stop. I mean, it shows each driveway, each can, what have you. So that's loaded into the system, who our customer is. So that'll be there, and then it'll show whether or not it was picked up.
Okay. My other question through your chair, seniors, we have a lot of seniors who need your help, which I greatly appreciate them picking up going and get the senior's trash can and bringing it to the street and taking it back. So will this incorporate, or are we going to lose this?
Nope, that will incorporate that service that we provide. Matter of fact, the last call I was on, and I think I missed the most recent one because we had negotiations going on, that was exactly what we talked about. Like I said, the people with Rubicon, they have a sanitation knowledge. They asked that exact question. Do you offer this service? And the answer was yes. Okay, give us that list so we can put that into the database as well. So yes, that'll continue on and that'll be incorporated.
Thank you.
Mr. Snyder.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Director Pianowski, more just a comment. I'm very in support of this. I think it's long overdue. I echo many of the same talking points that Councilwoman Sawerka had brought up. Is there any way we can communicate with them that, like, the building department, we, like, kind of like what she said, can we give them a heads up, though? Like, we have already issued subdivision extensions here, here, and here. We're estimated to project another 400 houses in this section when we do the initial, like, forecasting like a year or two that, you know, we will have an additional, like, some of the developments are going to have, you know, 200 more homes when it's done, so that would impact the schedule.
Well, this current agreement that you're looking at now has a date. I mean, it's going to have a date once it's approved. And so at some point, they're going to do that work from that date back and get us set up. Again, if we wanted to explore them, some type of update, annual update or something like that, this is a one-time, that's characterized that way on purpose. But this will get us set up, and then if we wanted to update it, I would imagine, and I haven't explored that with them yet because we're getting started and that kind of stuff, you know, I can talk with them about how often they would suggest such an update, that kind of stuff. And we could explore that for the future, of course.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair, when would this actually launch? Like, when are we looking to start, like, when would it actually start?
Well, some of it's going to be, once it's approved by council, so of
Yeah,
course, you know.
obviously.
The process we're going through with the app is about a 90-day lead time. So uploading all the information, get all the customer information, building the routes and that kind of stuff. Whether that assists us and we get a head start on this process because we've got some of that data already in place, I'll explore that with them and get you. I know that the other thing is 90-day lead time. I don't have the answer for a lead time on this particular program, but I can bring that back to you.
All right,
I'll
cool,
keep you
awesome,
informed.
thank
Yep.
you.
Mr. Stewart? No, I'm sorry. Mr. Oswald.
Through Mr. Chair, Mr. Pianowski. So one comment and one question. The comment is, I like the idea, and I know they're busy doing their stuff when they're driving. They got a lot of things going on, but for them to have somewhere they can push the address of Tallgrass or this issue, things like that, I think that's great. We've been talking about this, how many city workers drive by, they could call in, well, that's not being done. So that's a great idea. I like that. The other question is that when you start analyzing this, are you going to analyze it for, we are looking into what we're going to be doing with recycling. So how is that going to, you know, because recycling and sanitation is all part of it.
Yeah.
And depending on the program, I know you're working on that. Have they thought about anything with that?
Well, first and foremost, the driver, let me just be clear so everybody's benefit knowledge, the driver wouldn't input an address. It actually like geo-tracks it. They basically push and I think it captures the latitude and longitude. And we can set it up, for instance, like a pothole for that to go directly to the street department. And so we have some reporting things there that we'll try and take advantage of that'll increase efficiencies in other areas. But yes, this product, the app product per se, more so, was taken into consideration as we consider a recycling program and what we might do in the future for all things. So I think I'm a big believer that any data is helpful in making decisions. And so the heart of this is data. And so I think that getting the data and getting more information about the service that's demanded by our community is only going to help us provide a better service. And so, yes, I fully expect all that to come into play.
Thank
This
you.
data was developed years ago by UPS originally. You've heard the thing about only making left turns.
Yeah.
But with satellite systems today, these are accurate to within the ones that we just viewed recently is 24 inches. So it can even tell you if a driver is riding on somebody else's bumper too close, how long, if a vehicle is sitting idle time, you know, if they're sitting there having a cigarette 10 times a day or whatever situation. It's amazing what these new fleet management systems can do. I'm sorry. Oh, Mr. Sarah?
All my questions have been answered.
Okay, I'm sorry,
Through
Mrs.
the chair,
Swartz.
one additional question. I'm assuming we're going to follow or track the bulk route as well?
Yes, yes, all routes will be included in the app program, and also in the assessment for the other program as to how to best
Any
efficiently.
efficiencies that we can find would be really good. Thank you.
No more questions. Law Director.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was just inquiring as to whether an emergency clause is being requested.
No.
Okay, thank you.
There's no more questions. I will read the committee report. Thank you. We have considered the matter of a one-time service agreement with Rubicon Global LLC for fleet optimization consultation services in the amount of $31,400. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into the said agreement. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Motion's been made and properly seconded.
Call for the question.
Question's been called. All in favor, use the voting sign aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, just for the record, my mic wasn't on when I made the second, so I just wanted, just so you know. Just so it's on record, my mic wasn't on for the second. I said the second, but my mic was off, so I just wanted to make sure it was on the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 3 is the matter of city property no longer suitable for use and to be disposed of. Chief Pernesti reached out to us today. I'm sorry, Director Panowski.
Yes, thank you. I told the chief he didn't need to be here this evening, that I would take care of this. It's pretty simple. These are hydraulic, probably what you would refer to as jaws of life, if that is familiar with you. So we had recently purchased some new ones, and part of that purchase agreement was a trade-in of our old, but the company actually doesn't want them back. They want us to take them somewhere and destroy them, basically. And so this is just your authorization for us to dispose of the property pursuant to that purchase agreement. We thought it might be a formality, but we thought it was better to come here and get final approval. And then Chief Pernesti will set up with the vendor to verify the destruction or however they want to go about that. But that's the purpose of this request.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? If not, I will read the committee report. We have considered the matter of finding the city has old fire department extrication equipment that is unfit for public use and no longer needed. An ordinance authorizing the safety service director to declare said city property unfit and to dispose of by the best means possible. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and properly seconded. Question's been called. All in favor, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And the final item on tonight's agenda, the matter of amendments to the 2024 permanent appropriations. Directors Pileski and Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are no amendments to the appropriation tonight.
Wonderful. Any questions for the finance director? If not, I would entertain a motion to dismiss.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and properly seconded.
Question.
Question's been called. All in favor, use a voting sign aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Good night, everyone.